Life in our small, struggling family had taught us to find solace in simplicity. When news of the neighbor's tragic end at the hands of a serial killer reached our ears, it was as if a dark cloud had settled over our already modest existence. The relatives of the murdered family, seeking to turn the page on their grief, organized a sale to part with the belongings left behind. Drawn by the prospect of affordable furniture to bring warmth to our home, we ventured into the house still haunted by the echoes of horror. As we perused the items on sale, our eyes fell upon a doll, an old relic with glassy eyes. It was a peculiar addition, but the price tag was meager, and our daughter's eyes sparkled with excitement. With empathy for the family that had faced such tragedy, we decided to purchase the doll, hoping to give it a new home. That night, as the wind whispered through the worn walls of our dwelling, we placed the doll on our daughter's shelf. Our daughter, with her innocent eyes and heart full of curiosity, quickly became inseparable from the doll. It became her constant companion, a silent confidant in the quiet corners of her world. At first, we found it endearing, the imaginative conversations, the laughter that echoed through the halls as she played tea party with her newfound friend. However, as time passed, the line between innocent play and something more sinister began to blur. Our daughter, in her youthful innocence, began to address the doll by the name of the daughter of the murdered neighbors, a friend with whom she shared secrets and stories. As the days wore on, our concern grew. Our daughter's affection for the doll transformed into an obsession. She refused to eat, to go to school, and to be separated from the doll for a second. Worried about the toll this unsettling bond might take on our daughter's mental well-being, we decided to intervene. With a heavy heart I waited for her to fall asleep, then gently separated her from the doll and placing it in our bedroom. That night, as we lay in our bed, a chilling silence enveloped the room. The weight of the decision to separate our daughter from the doll hung in the air like an unspoken tension. In the stillness, the night lamp, perched securely on the bedside table, suddenly crashed to the ground with a deafening shatter. The next morning, the doll was gone. Confused and anxious, we went to our daughter's room, only to find her peacefully asleep, hugging the doll as if it had never left. The unease in our hearts intensified as we questioned how the doll had returned when I had securely placed it out of her reach. The situation escalated. Our daughter's obsession grew, refusing to eat unless we also fed the doll, setting a place at the table for an inanimate companion. The once lively child seemed a mere vessel for the doll's malevolent influence. Frustration and concern etched lines on our faces as we grappled with the inexplicable hold the doll had over our daughter. Driven by a mix of fear and determination, I decided to take matters into my own hands. Under the cover of night, I waited for our daughter to succumb to sleep before carefully prying the doll from her tiny grasp. In the hushed darkness, I carried the doll through the silent corridors of our home, determined to rid our lives of this haunted relic. As I opened the front door, an unexpected force slammed it shut with a deafening reverberation. The lights flickered and died, plunging the house into an impenetrable darkness. Panic surged through me. When I turned, the moonlight revealed a figure standing before me, the daughter of the murdered family. Her presence exuded an aura of malevolence, her eyes glinting with unsettling evil. Suddenly the little girl let out a deafening scream. I couldn't hear my own thoughts. Overwhelmed by terror, my senses gave way, and I succumbed to unconsciousness. When I awoke to my wife's concerned voice, the realization of the night's events settling upon me like a heavy weight. Trembling, I recounted the harrowing encounter with the spectral child, the slamming door, and the malevolent screams that seemed to pierce the very fabric of reality. The doll had returned to our daughter once again, as if mocking our feeble attempts to sever its insidious connection. The next day, my wife and I, burdened by fear and confusion, decided to seek help beyond the realms of our understanding. A medium, known for her ability to bridge the gap between the living and the departed, was our hope. As she entered our home, asked to speak to our daughter and the doll. The medium, with a demeanor both calming and otherworldly, began her communion with the spirit trapped within the doll. "The spirit of a little girl resides in this doll," she spoke. "Trapped between realms, she seeks resolution and the embrace of her grieving parents." The revelation sent shivers down our spines, confirming our darkest suspicions. The medium, with an unwavering resolve, guided the spirit through the ethereal threshold, offering solace to the tormented soul that had unwittingly become a part of our lives. As the ritual unfolded, the atmosphere shifted. A serene calm settled over our home, dispelling the malevolence that had plagued us. The medium assured us that the spirit of the little girl had found peace, reunited with her parents in the afterlife. With gratitude and relief, we watched as the woman concluded the ritual. In the days that followed, our lives gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy. The doll, once harboring a trapped soul, became our daughter's favorite companion once again. Only now, she claimed her friend was no longer confined within the porcelain prison. The specter of fear that had loomed over our family began to dissipate, replaced by a newfound understanding of the delicate balance between our world and the realm that lie beyond.
I am a skilled restorer of old porcelain objects, a craft I had been practicing for years. My small shop was a haven for antique enthusiasts, and I prided myself on bringing life back to forgotten relics. But one day, an old woman, with a shawl wrapped tightly around her frail shoulders, entered my shop. She carried a worn, broken porcelain doll in her trembling hands. She placed the doll on my counter and said, "This belongs to my daughter. It's been in our family for generations. Can you restore it?" Her eyes held a deep sadness, and her voice quivered with emotion. I agreed to take on the project, intrigued by the sentimental value the doll held for her. The strange events began when one evening, as I meticulously worked on restoring the doll, the lamp's warm glow flickered and died. Startled, I reached for the light switch, attempting to reignite the soft illumination that bathed my workshop in a comforting ambience. With a swift motion, I managed to bring the lamp back to life. Yet, as the room embraced the returning light, my eyes caught a fleeting shadowy figure standing in the corner. A second later the light went out again. After I turned on the light, the figure seemed to dissolve into the darkness, leaving me with an unsettling feeling that lingered in the air. The room felt charged with an otherworldly energy, and my hands, which had been steady moments before, now trembled as I continued my work. As the restoration continued, the paranormal occurrences intensified. Objects that had once stood undisturbed on my shelves began to wobble and crash to the floor. The sound of porcelain meeting the unforgiving surface of the workshop echoed through the room like a haunting melody. The temperature began to drop sharply, my breath was visible in the cold air. I could see my own unease mirrored in the condensation forming on the surfaces around me. Despite the growing unease, a strange compulsion urged me to press on, to complete the restoration. As I carefully placed the final piece of the doll in its rightful spot, a wave of sickness washed over me. The air in the room grew heavy, and an unsettling chill crept down my spine. Ignoring the discomfort, I stood back to admire my work, only to be met with a sudden weakness that threatened to crumple my resolve. Determined to shake off the feeling, I decided to take a short break. I made my way to the bathroom, hoping that a splash of water on my face would dispel the nausea that clung to me. As I approached the workshop door, it slammed with a force that shook the walls. The light flickered and died, plunging the room into impenetrable darkness. Panic welled up inside me as I fumbled for my flashlight, the beam revealing the shadowy figure right in front of me. In the figure's hands, the porcelain doll gleamed eerily, its features twisted into a grotesque parody of joy. Panic shot through my veins as the figure grabbed me by the throat with inhuman strength. A cold, phantom hand closed around my neck, squeezing the breath from my lungs. I struggled to break free, my vision blurring as the world darkened around me. I woke up on the cold floor, disoriented and gasping for air. The room was silent, the oppressive energy replaced by an unsettling stillness. As I shuffled back to the desk, I saw a note waiting for me. The message, penned in elegant yet haunting handwriting, thanked me for my efforts and included payment for the completed restoration. The money lay neatly on the desk, and the porcelain doll was gone.
I am a puppeteer by trade, and my workshop is a realm where strings come to life, weaving stories that dance on the fine line between reality and the supernatural. Each puppet in my collection holds a tale, an expression of emotions and dreams that transcend the limitations of their crafted forms. Little did I know that my expertise in this age-old art would plunge me into a narrative of inexplicable occurrences, a tale that began with a seemingly ordinary online purchase. One day, amidst the digital hum of online marketplaces, I stumbled upon a listing that caught my attention, an old doll with a history hinted at by the pixels on my screen. My fingers danced across the keyboard, sealing the fate of this peculiar addition to my collection. What seemed like a routine transaction, however, would soon unravel into a story that blurred the lines between my artistry and the supernatural. As the package arrived, the atmosphere in my workshop shifted. The air seemed charged with an unspoken energy, and the other puppets on the shelves seemed to regard the newcomer with a wary gaze. The doll, with its porcelain features, looked innocent enough, but I felt there was more to its story. Already that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows crept across the workshop, I found myself plagued by haunting nightmares. I was hugging the doll, and I was holding a knife in my right hand. Suddenly I started cutting my wrist on my left hand. Waking in a cold sweat, I dismissed the nightmarish visions as mere figments of an overactive imagination. Turning, my heart skipped a beat. The doll, with its innocent gaze and porcelain countenance, sat on the shelf, an unsettling presence in the dimly lit space. As the nights wore on, the nightmares persisted, each more vivid and unsettling than the last. Each morning, as I awoke with a pounding heart and beads of perspiration clinging to my forehead, I found the doll in a new location within the workshop. One fateful evening, the haunting strains of a puppet performance echoed through the dimly lit workshop. The sound seemed to emanate from the puppet room, a chamber filled with both the echoes of puppetry's past and the lingering nightmares that had become an unwelcome companion. Driven by an inexplicable compulsion, I ventured into the puppet room, my footsteps echoing in the stillness. To my surprise, in the center of the room stood a man doing a puppet show. In his hands, the doll I had acquired online moved with an uncanny grace. My breath caught in my throat as I witnessed an unsettling scene, blood trickling from the man's wrists, staining the puppet. The air in the room seemed thick with a malevolent energy, as if the nightmares that had haunted my sleep had materialized before me. Suddenly, the room seemed to revolt against the surreal spectacle. The windows shattered with an otherworldly force, fragments of glass cascading to the floor. A chilling wind swept through the room, carrying with it the echoes of the haunting melody. In an instant, the scene of despair dissolved, and the puppet room returned to its silent, dimly lit state. I stood there, a puppeteer in a workshop now marked by the residue of the supernatural. The doll, once again perched on a shelf, held a gaze that seemed to acknowledge the disturbing event that had transpired. Determined to unravel the mystery, I reached out to the online seller, a faceless entity in the digital realm. After some probing, I received a message containing a cryptic tale of the doll's past. The previous owner, another puppeteer, had lived a life steeped in financial misery, finding solace and companionship in the doll. The tale took a darker turn when I learned that the previous owner had crafted a puppetry show intended solely for this particular doll. However, before he could bring his creation to an audience, he had killed himself with this doll in his hands, leaving the performance incomplete. Realizing that the supernatural events mirrored the previous owner's unfulfilled passion, I delved into the intricacies of the unfinished show. Night after night, I practiced the puppetry, feeling the lingering presence of the previous owner guiding my every move. The doll, now a central figure in this spectral ballet, seemed to resonate with the emotions of the past. Its glassy eyes reflected a sadness that echoed through the room, and the whispers grew more pronounced as I drew closer to replicating the performance. Finally, the night arrived when I decided to perform the performance in front of an audience. Viewers had come to watch the eerie dance of the puppet. As the performance ended, the audience began to applaud. After that evening, the strange events ended.